So let me just quickly talk about what a sprint is. So I mean, it's a period uh, within which a goal is set that the team is supposed to produce or develop a product. Now, this within this period, a plan ought to be created for that period. Note that the period, just like how maybe the waterfall approach, you would spend like 6 months or so to prepare requirements and things like that. Scrum is trying to define a very shorter period because of changes and the adaptability we want to have. We want to define a very short period so that even within that period, should things change, we can easily adapt within the next period that we want to produce some value out of what we want to achieve. So there's supposed to be a plan. Now this plan will obviously state a goal. If it's supposed to state a goal, then there's something we call definition of done. This definition of done is supposed to determine what is supposed to be done to show that the goal has been met. Accountability, obviously, as professionals, you would need to do that. So you have a plan. There is a definition of done because there's a goal. And to meet the goal, if I meet the goal, then it means the work that I have to do is done. If the work is done, we need to, that implies there was some things you had to do to show that something is done. And that is what we are referring to as the definition of done. So it is important to specify some criteria as to what will determine that for a sprint or for that short period, the value we wanted to produce, we've actually accomplished it, to say that it's done. Now, product owner is accountable for maximizing the value of a product result from the work of the Scrum team. Basically, he communicates. The product owner is actually the one that gives the sprint goal or communicates what the goal is at the end of the day. He gives his requirements, he prioritizes them, and ensures that developers, Scrum Master all understand what the requirements are. Scrum Master, in effect, is more like I mentioned, a project manager, but that's more because this time around things are a bit not so straightforward. So, everything we are talking about Scrum, the Scrum Master is supposed to ensure that the team adheres to this. Scrum Masters are even more like teachers because apart from the fact that we are all trying to achieve a goal, they need to ensure that the team actually understands Scrum, the team practices these guidelines, because that is what has been determined to help achieve goals. So he realized that he coaches the team in self-management and cross-functionality, helps the Scrum team focus on creating high-value increments, cost removal of impediments. Things do happen when you are developing. Some blockers might come along the way. If there's a Scrum Master, this is reported to the Scrum Master. He will engage with product owner to help them remove these blockers because you need to produce value at the end of the day. That's why the role of the Scrum Master is quite important. So he needs to be technically inclined a little and at the same time be business inclined so that he can liaise between the two requirements of product owner but guide the team to accomplish the goal. In terms of helping the Scrum Master, he finds techniques for effective product goal definition. He helps the Scrum Master based on their requirements, guide them in their prioritization for them to specify their goals. I mean, you realize not all organizations follow these things. So a Scrum Master's role is supposed to, if you enter an organization and you're a Scrum Master, you have your product owner, you end up having to help him to follow the Scrum guide on how he can clarify requirements, prepare his backlog for developers or the development team to work on. We'll finally talk about the Scrum events. So I did talk a little about the sprints. Now, in the sprints, there's what we call sprint planning. So the events that happen in a sprint.
Hello, can you explain the sprint again?
Okay. it is a very essential part of this our Scrum that we're talking about. In the sense that, like what the term used here, it is the heartbeat of Scrum. I mean, it's a defined period where a goal is set and developers are meant to achieve that goal, right? So, as stated here, fixed lengths of events of 1 month or less to create consistency. Where ideas are turned into value. So, we could say that, okay, every week we'll break down our requirements, and every week we want to deliver value on something to achieve the overall goal of developing that software. That period is what we are calling the sprint. Note that in very big organizations, sprints, as stated here, is consistent. Right after a sprint ends, another sprint starts. So in an organization, that is why it's important that the term consistency is taken into note. The period and the amount of work done within that time period should be such that by the end of the sprint, developers are still poised to take up another sprint. It shouldn't be such that developers spend a lot of hours, late nights and things, and then at the end of the day, when a sprint ends, they are so, tired that they cannot take up another sprint immediately. They would need some day or two to rest, which shouldn't be the case. So Scrum, the sprint and Scrum preaches consistency. It should be a period and a work things like what we call estimations of work hours. That is to say that your requirements in a sprint, you will actually need to estimate it based on the fact that developers come together, determine how many hours it will take them to accomplish a particular task. And then all of this is put together, right? To know that, okay, within this week, 2 weeks, or a month sprint, we'll be able to do an amount of hours of, say, 30. That 30 hours, take an amount of tasks you can do that can cover the 30 hours. Because at the end of the day, you need to deliver value. So that is the sprint. Now, what are the activities that go into a sprint? We have what we call a sprint planning. We have a daily scrum, a sprint review, and a sprint retrospective. Sprint planning usually happens on the first day and is the first start of the sprint. There's a precedent to this. The product owner should have prepared his backlog of requirements on what he wants to do.
Hello, sir. Please, what is a product backlog?
Okay. You see, I've been using the terms interchangeably. A product backlog is the requirements of the product owner on what has to be developed. So, for example, on your software, one of the tasks on a product backlog could be create maybe an authentication page, right, for, say, a website or something. Another one might be create a password reset page. These are front-end tasks. For somebody at the back end, it could be to create that login API and to create a password reset API. These will all be listed by the product owner on his product backlog. Now, with that in mind, I was saying that is a precedent to starting doing the sprint planning because the requirements needs to be there. A sprint is actually a development sprint. You are coming to develop and produce value. So, but you will see where that happens. That is to say that whilst the sprint is ongoing, product owner, Scrum Master might be engaging to prepare the backlog for the next sprint. That is why we said that it's not like the sprint happens and then another sprint, you now prepare your requirements and you continue. The sprint is continuous, and that therefore must be consistent with the development efforts and the requirements. So, just like planning goes, what is the goal I mean, how will the work get done? What can be done in the sprint? And what is the value we need to produce at the end of the sprint? These are the things that go into the sprint planning. Once these things are clarified, the sprint can start. Once the sprint is ongoing, there is what we call a daily scrum. A daily scrum is a daily update on what every developer is doing. You can see Scrum preaches about 50 minutes. It's a quick session where each developer will just say what they did the previous day. What was their blockers? Has it been resolved or not? Who is supposed to resolve? And then what they plan to do the current day. Very simple. We don't want to spend so much time doing meetings when there is work to do. So when this is done, Scrum Master will take up blockers, follow up, ensure that all those blockers are unblocked whilst development is still ongoing. There is what we call the sprint review. After the work is done, obviously, we need to review what has been done. So we'll have a session, developers, stakeholder, or this product owner with Scrum Master. We review what has been done. Product owner can give his suggestions. Maybe he would want things to be updated, or he can determine whether it meets requirements or not. We also have, that's the sprint review. We have what we call the sprint retrospective. This usually happens after the review. After a review is done, right? Guys, development and the work has to be smooth. It has to be enjoyable. So to ensure quality and effectiveness, we also have what we call the sprint retrospective. There we are not going to talk about the technicalities. You will have a short session and discuss things that might have gone wrong in terms of the social aspects of the sprint. So, as stated here, your focus will be on individuals, the interactions, the processes and tools, and their definition of that. Was someone very rude? Did someone delay you? Was someone supposed to do some work and he did it? Was his commitment very low? We discuss those ones. And then we refine. We all accept what we didn't do correctly or things that could improve in the next sprint. We take action points and note that whatever action points are taken will need to be fed into the next sprint. So we'll refine, and when a new sprint starts, we'll need to make sure that our retrospective, whatever was said about the individuals, interactions, processes, and tools, were they resolved in this next sprint? Because a Scrum team is continuous and must be consistent, should also ensure that developers are, I would say, in a good mood to continue work. We don't want a situation where one developer is quarreling with another, because that will slow the work. Note, we want to deliver value, and everything we need to do to deliver value, that is our focus. Guys, there's more to talk about this, but I'll move on with the program, and then maybe when we finish, if you have questions, I can answer them. But like I said, I will share these links so you can have a look at these ones. So you can see here the sprint artifacts, the items that are involved in the sprints, the product backlog, a sprint backlog. So just like what I mentioned about the product backlog, a sprint backlog will then be the requirements that are taken into a sprint. So the product backlog will hold all requirements for development, and a sprint backlog will just hold what is supposed to be done within the sprint. You can see here there's also what an increment is. At the end of every sprint, the goal is that we develop an increment. This is quite important. You have to take note of that. An increment here is we need to have delivered some value in what we wanted to, in our goal, right? Which obviously aligns with the value that we need to deliver on. So that is Scrum. Now, because of what I've talked about, this part will be quite faster, because the agile part of it and the Scrum, we have covered some things. When you get to software engineering and you are talking about requirements engineering, these things might also come up. And for those that have already done it, it might be a refresh. There are various approaches. You can break down your requirements in a top-down approach, or you can actually do a bottom-up. Note that just like Scrum, the reason I did point all of these to user focus is that your requirements should be focused on the users. User is not your client, but whoever is going to use the product. So that if I'm gathering requirements, what does the user need to do? That is what I'm going to ask. If I'm to document, I will document this in terms of user should be able to log in. User should be able to do this. As a user, you should be able to do this so that this is what will happen. Those are things that I will be focused on. Everything you want to do in terms of your requirements should be should be centered on the users of the product. Now, this is just a few steps you can follow. You want to gather the requirements. As usual, you should be ask questions based on, that's centered on the user. Gather these requirements. You want to document these requirements, and it's essential. And like I told you, Scrum is preaching, we just do enough documentation, but we don't want to waste so much time on the documentation. So document the essentials that actually cover the core of what you have to do. After documenting, you want to analyze these requirements. Sometimes some things relate, and you need to see how this relation actually happens. In that case, you want to take your time, determine, okay, after a user logs in, after we are saying that maybe in our case, there's a requirement that when he logs in after some time, he's supposed to be logged out. So what service will be monitoring that time for the user when he logs in? This analysis is what you will do, because some requirements have sub-children in the sense that the requirement leads to other requirements which may not be stated by the client, but you want to let the client know that this thing we are doing, this is the implication. So it means we have to do this also. After analysis, you want to validate and verify, which I just talked about now. Guys, we are not doing the thing for ourselves. We are going to be used by people, and then you also have a client. The client needs to validate that what you are saying. So if you look at this, from the first one, second, and third, what you are doing is you go and take it from clients. The first one, you take it from the clients, you document it, you analyze, because that's your role. You are the engineer, so you analyze what the client is saying. But you analyze and then you go back to him to say that from what you told me, this is what I think you are saying we should do. Kindly validate. Is that the expectation? Otherwise, you will finish and develop a software that will not be used. So validate, verify that is correct. And then you check for completeness. The reason I link this completeness back together is that, like I told you, requirements is what is not fixed. So, you can check completeness on some sections. Login, obviously, the user must be logged in at the end of the day. That is the goal. But then, how he logs in might change. That is why, even though you might check that it's complete, you want to still gather extra information to be sure you are on the right track. That is why the process does start again. So you check, you gather, you document, you analyze, validate, verify. You check that, okay, it actually is complete. This will help us meet the goal. But then, like I told you, as the requirement changes, you do go back together, you document, you analyze, and then you validate, verify once again, and check for completeness. This you will talk about it, I'm sure, in your software engineering classes. For those who've done it, probably you might have talked about it. Now, for top-down and bottom-up approach, look at it this way. Top-down in the sense that the very big picture, you want to look at it that way, and then break it down as to what will be needed as you go through the flow. Bottom-up is very, you might require a bit of experience with this because you will need to know all the
top-down.
Okay, yeah, I was saying that. Yeah. Sure. So, yeah. So I was saying that for a top-down, you want to pick what the requirement is. There's an overall picture client to look at. Someone tells you he wants to build an Uber app. That's the app he wants. This is the top picture. You want to break down an Uber app. What does it entail? Whatever you've determined to be what it entails, what does those also entail? That is to say that you are breaking it down from the top down. Now, from the bottom up, there are various expectations with this Uber app I'm talking about. There's supposed to be some, say, a mobile app. There's supposed to be some, say, some backend system that will monitor some geolocation and stuff. You now take, these are the expectations in there. You rather take these expectations and work them up to what an Uber app is. So that if there's a front end, and then the geolocation systems all will interact and give you this Uber app that we are talking about. Note that I didn't think about it from an Uber app to a front end. I rather thought about this in terms of what was down and then what it will produce at the end of the day. I hope that's clear. So that's the top down and the bottom up. But in both cases, the process you follow through is this. However, how you think about it is what we are considering in terms of top down or bottom up. It's essential as a developer, even if you are writing algorithms. I mean, you are writing some snippet to implement stuff. You are concerned about what you need to your output. And then you work out from your output, you work out what you need to do to achieve that output. So that is the same flow, how you want to think about your requirements. There are goals. There is a big picture. You want to think about things either from the big picture down or with experience. Sometimes you get to know that, okay, these things involve a lot of things. This, because of some work that you've done. And then you want to think about it in terms of how you can put all these together to achieve that goal. And that will become the bottom up. Now, this was a slide, but I had talked about it quite a lot. And this is what I meant by reality versus the myth. Requirements always change and are never static, even if they are supposedly presented as static. Don't let a client lie to you telling you that I just want some static websites that will do this and this. By the time you finish, it might end up being an e-commerce platform. I mean, guys, we are going to school. When you are working, you need to be paid for your work, which means you need to do your work very well. You need to be able to cost things properly. And determining amount of work things will take is where you also get your money. So they can tell you, oh, this is just what I want. But note, it is always not just that. The simple truth is, time, as long as time moves forward, so does the requirements that they bring. And like I told you, as a developer, you'd realize that now the trend with most of these platforms online that we use are subscription basis. Why? Because they know that they are going to make updates. So if they take you one-time costs, they get to lose, since their updates will then turn out to be free. Or they don't want to present to you that, okay, there's an update you have to pay for. For it to seem seamless, they tell you it's on subscription basis. That's the way things are now, because requirements are always changing and they need to make updates. Note this: being unable to decide on what to do is never the way to go. I mean, indecision can make you get stuck, and then clients will be requesting updates from you and you don't know what to do. If you look at the Scrum part that I did talk about, take a small chunk of work, make sure you can deliver on that. If there are certain hard decisions, pick something to do so that you will know what comes out at the end of that, and then the term refinements comes to play. You do it, it may not necessarily even meet the goal, but it is better to produce something and then refine it so that the client saw that, okay, this is what was done, and now this is what we are. It is a bit close, but it doesn't meet total expectation. So we can refine it to actually meet the expectation. Do not be indecisive. It's a very bad thing in terms of software development. You can sit down trying to find the best way to accomplish maybe an algorithm, to write a script. And then at the end of the day, you don't get to write it because you were still not, you still didn't pick how you want to go about it. Yes, you can even pick the simplest way. It might result in memory leaks. It might result in a slow process. But with that, you get to know that, okay, this is actually slow. How can I speed up the implementation? How can I make this code more resilient to faults? Things like that. That is why you need to keep in mind the term refinement. As requirements change, even if for some parts of the requirements they never change or they don't change, you want to refine your code to always make things better. You want to refine the program. You want to refine the products that you are developing, because actual demands do change. You are seeing iPhone 10 or iPhone X. Next year there's 11. It's not that they just want to create new products. I mean, technology is developed, it's changing, new advancements are happening, and that means they need to make some capabilities available. So they refine these things and bring better versions of whatever they developed previously. Now, I mean, that is basically Agile, Scrum, and the requirements in here in a nutshell. I think I've taken enough time. You realize that at this last bit, I'm just trying to rush through so you can ask questions, and also the time is fast spent. So there are various things you can do to improve yourself. I do understand those guys who might feel like they are not meant for this place, and maybe they might want to drop the course or stuff like that. A lot of people experience that. See, you are not the first person experiencing it. And that is not to actually downplay you, but it is a phase that lets you know that SHS, JHS, university is different. Even the outside world is also different. The world of work is also different. Everybody wants to be rich. That's the truth. Nobody wants to be poor. But if you want to be rich the right way, then you need to have skills that can earn you enough for yourself. If you want to earn that skill, develop those skills, there are things you ought to do or you ought to know to put yourself in a competitive state. In a state where you do an interview and then they're already asking you how much do you want because we are okay with you. That is the level you want to get to. With yourself, you will feel happy when you get to that level, and it's important. There are a lot of issues. There might be a lot of issues along the way. Some people do get it smooth because things work out for them, but you need to try a lot of things yourself. Have the correct mindset, and then you can do a lot of things. So first, note in terms of development, no matter what field you want to go to in CS, don't bring yourself down to the point of thinking that, okay, I'm not a good developer. And the concepts are not all that difficult. Usually people think about it in the wrong way, and then it sort of confuses them and they think it's very complex, it's difficult. See, the science field is interesting. What is termed difficult is actually something that can make you feel happy by trying to find out these things. Be curious. When you are learning programming, my first advice here on programming, if you are learning programming, guys, don't just listen to or don't just read what the book is saying. Try it out. Change things. Don't even if the book is giving you variations on things, after trying what book is saying, try things out yourself. Just change a field. Try to see, is there an existing inbuilt function on things? Try things out and see what happens. See the results. See the behaviors. And now try to interpret what might have gone wrong or why is it behaving this way because of this change. It helps you to easily grasp things. Most at times, you go to class, you listen to it, you get a bit confused. The book is saying this, so that's just what you look at. You are not exploring along that programming language. Trying things out is really important for programming. Note, don't let a lecturer leave class when you don't understand. No. I think I'm back again. My network fluctuated a little. Can you hear me now? I was saying that, guys, do not leave the room. And you get the understanding there, so that your extra work you do in your hall when you are going over the work is to try to explore and get a deeper understanding of what is being taught. If you just allow him to go, you don't understand, and you are now going to find a way to understand. You spend more time to understand what was already taught in class. So what time do you get to do the exploration you have to do to get a deeper understanding of what you were taught? This is very important, especially with programming. Lecturers will explain the concepts, and it's important for you to grasp it, so that when you go and you are exploring, you are now trying things out. You are not now trying to understand what was taught. Requirements engineering, we've talked about it. Note, like I told you, even if you end up being, say, a business manager, you end up being a CEO of a big company, it is important that you're able to engineer requirements to be worked on. And these requirements are supposed to produce value or products that your clients can actually use. You might be lucky to enter a business which has products. In some cases, you might start up a business yourself. You want to go out and get problems that you can engineer solutions for. And it's important that you have this skill, even if it's programming. If you are told to develop an algorithm for something, you need to ask for requirements on how you can achieve that, or you need to research on how you can achieve that. That is requirement gathering to accomplish that goal of writing the script. So it's a skill you must have. In some cases, you will want to learn how to understand architectures of systems. Don't only be concerned about using systems. You need to know how to understand systems, how systems interact with others, how a whole bigger system is. I mean, the components of a system is interconnected. Your design sessions, I believe, will go through this. It's quite important. They all add up to yourself. No matter what field you end up in, having a bit of these is very, very important. Now, there are a lot of things happening. I know with time it will be incorporated into the academic system, especially on our side, in our part of the world. There are a lot of tools. There's cloud, there is DevOps, there's Kubernetes, there's microservices, there's enterprise solutions. Note, building a system for some startup is different from building a system for an enterprise. Their requirements are different. Scale of these services are very important to them, and ensuring speed, ensuring things are consistent across various services are very important. So it's important that even as you're in school, sometimes, I mean, your free time, if you feel bored, instead of watching some movie, watch tech talks on cloud infrastructures. You could learn GCP, you could learn AWS, not so detailed, but get to understand how these things work. And then when you have time, you can do more detailed reading on them. Learn about DevOps tools, Azure DevOps. You can learn about Sonar Cloud. You can learn about Argo CD. You can learn about Terraform. You can learn. I mean, there are a lot of things out there for development operations that are used to deploy services, create stuff. I mean, automate deployments and others. There's Kubernetes, which is the game now. it writes on this concept of microservices. Guys, usually in school, when you build your applications, you build them as one single monolithic service that has a lot of inner services, inner functions. The world is going to a place where you want to separate your services as standalone units that can maybe communicate over network, but each standalone unit is actually a service that can run on its own. In that case, Kubernetes is a platform can help you manage your microservices. So we have these virtualized environments called clusters, where you can have multiple microservices, usually in containers, because you can learn about Dockers, usually in containers, and then Kubernetes is sort of managing this whole cluster of the services, their interaction, and even how it interacts with external services or internal services, things like that. Enterprise solutions encapsulates these things I talked about earlier: the cloud, DevOps, Kubernetes, microservices. I think I did close this, but there's this microservices page. Exactly. Probably I can add it to the slide that talks about microservices. I will add it. Maybe I can put this in the chat now, just so I don't forget myself. No, these may be enterprise level things, right? At scale, development on very sensitive areas. But if you don't learn them now, you can't go in to learn, because those environments are very fast paced. That is the issue. You want to be, maybe you want to work with Google, but you need to have this experience. If the experience is also hard at Google, then how do you get there before you get that experience? So you need to try these things out. Sometimes it might be costly. You want to maybe create a G Cloud account or an Azure account or an AWS account. Some money of yours will go. But you know that at the end of the day, there's some benefit, because when you gain the skills and it's on your CV, no one can deny you. You want to try some of these online courses on these things. Note, getting the skill, to me personally, is more important than getting the certificates. But note that these organizations look out for the skills and the certificates. As long as you can prove that you really know, you may get a contract. But it will be important to write some of these certifications, have these on your CVs, not only because you want to apply for the job that you get a certification. So you just get someone to do it for you, and then you go and sit behind there. You go and apply for the job, because you might find yourself wanting on the job. Getting in might be easier for you. Doing the job might get you out, and that would be more disgraceful. Make sure, this is one thing you really need to note. On your CV, if you are applying for a particular job and you know you are good at it, draft the CV to show that your strong points that can actually meet the demand that the role is requiring. Don't just present your CV to be generic, because then you are not presenting yourself as being a strong person for that role. It's a lot of people, even my mates, I know some may not be aware of this, but this is something I learned along the way. The CV you present for one role might not even be the CV you present for another. Why? Because you may have both skills, but for each role, you want to present your CV in a manner that shows that you are very strong in what they are demanding. It's not a lie. You are presenting your strong points, because like I told you, that's why I took you through these things, so that you would have already mastered it, and then when you get anywhere, you can easily adapt. This is what counts for having enough knowledge of different relevant areas. There are a lot of jobs out there, but there are also a lot of developers out there. So you want to sell yourself strong by being able to get into some of these areas using what you know, your skills, not necessarily what you've been told or you have idea about. Try them out, and see how things fail and know how to correct them. It would be a good experience. Thank you. Yeah, it was. I mean, there are a lot of things I did that I put in the build yourself section. There are a lot of things that I did. So, for example, I mean, Mark would be aware. I don't allow lecturers to leave a classroom when I don't understand something without asking. Because to me, that time I would have to go spend now trying to understand what has been taught. I could use that same time to explore more on the topic and get a deeper understanding of it. Because as usual, class session, I mean, the hours, is it 2 hours or even 1 hour, 45 minutes? You may not really get enough. I mean, that was on the school level. But after school, guys, through this, you need to push yourself more than you actually would want. In the sense that uh, this is the time you can do some late nights, maybe in the weekend, doing some programming, trying the things out yourself. It may be a new language, you want to pick it up and apply the programming concepts you've learned, because school will only teach you a few programming languages. So you want to pick it up. For example, I mean, in my first job after school, this is not, it was a side gig. A side gig, right? It was a personal one that we got. It wasn't like I was working for a company. So a contract we got.
Galamsey.
I learned for web programming class in school. I did learn PHP. So I started this job with PHP. I mean, you write your raw PHP scripts, your raw HTML classes and things. It did delay quite a lot, but at some point, I realized, okay, there are new things out there. So I took up Laravel as a framework to learn. This is a very key thing I'm saying here, and you have to note. The best way to actually learn some of these technologies is to do a project with them. Note that if you have a client on you who needs a deliverable, and then let me just say it for fan's sake, if you had $1 million right now and they told you to use a language or a tool that you've never used before, I'm sure you would do it. But when you are learning, it might not be $1 million that you are missing. It might be your future you are missing if you don't do it. So you want to spend that same hours for the project. Do all the research you want to you need to do to use that technology for it. And then try to, as long as you're able to accomplish or be able to develop that product with that technology, you realize you become very conversant with it. That is because if you do your requirements engineering and things correctly, the requirements will let you know that there are a lot of things to do. And if there are a lot of things to do and you end up being able to accomplish them with these technologies, then you would have learned quite a lot. That is one trick I do. If I have to learn a new thing, I have to use it for a project. I would learn the initial bit of it, do all the videos and stuff, but then to know that I've actually understood, I use it to do the project. I did it for Laravel. After Laravel, I got employed in one organization. My national service, for example, was on campus at IPO. I was an IT assistant managing the lab there, and then their website. Note, I've always been the kind that wants to try things out. I don't like sticking with the norm, right? So if you go to IPA today, the website they are using is what I built. I did sleepless nights in their office just trying Drupal as a website framework. A website development tool. I wrote codes in there and stuff like that. It was new to me, but I tried it. I went to UGCS because that was what UGCS was the one supposed to do it. I went there and the person there told me he's busy and can't do it, but the dean at the time was requiring it. So what I did was I copied out. The good thing is I took tutorials from the person at UGCS, came to my office. I spent 2 nights, weekends at the office. It's late night. You try it out. If it doesn't work, I'm the kind that I need the thing to work. And if it doesn't work, it gets annoying. But you need to learn to overcome that bit where you're trying it's not working. So you just get fed up and leave. No. That's not how it works. Note that immediately it works, the joy that comes to you, it's more than the troubles you went through. So that's learning new technologies and also using these on projects. That is how you become conversant with them. And like I mentioned in the build yourself, make sure you have relevant understanding of have some understanding of all these relevant areas. Requirements engineering, have some bit of programming skills. You might not be the best programmer, but at least some basic algorithms you should be able to write. And then try some of these tools out. That's all that gets you there. Make sure you know it, you can talk about it, and you can actually do it. It's 3 in 1. You know it, you can talk about it and do it. The talk about it is important because Drupal, you can look at it. The university website is built on that. So that was someone asked in the chat, so I did put it in the chat. Guys, the talk about it is important because for an interview, note that you are going to talk about the skills you have and what you can do. If you can't talk about it, they won't know that you can do the thing. So your best bet is know it, be able to talk about it, and be actually able to also execute it. So that has been it for me. Mark, I think you're on mute.
Yes, sir.
Mark, I'm not hearing you.
Yes.
Yes, sir. I can hear you.
Hello, guys. Can anybody hear Mark?
Yes. Yeah. I can hear you.
Guys, can anybody hear Mark?
Yes, please. We can hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you now. Yes. Yeah. Can you hear me? So, I mean, it falls into the self motivation part you did talk about, right? So note that, I mean, the reality of the matter is, even if you were to go out into the world of work, you might not end up doing exactly what you want to do. I took things from that angle. That if I met a situation that I was not familiar with, does that mean that I was going to quit because that's not what I want to have? I mean, that's not the situation I didn't want to, or I found myself in. Would I quit because that's not the situation I didn't want to find myself in? That's a better expression of that. So the point was, for example, the programming course 101, the introduction to is it introduction to computer science, for example. You know, some people do go to maybe some classes and things before they even come to school. I didn't, but when I came, we were given the pamphlets and things. New experience for me. It was a whole new environment and experience for me. But the goal here was, this is what I'd been given. I needed to find a way to still meet expectations, right? This is not even expectations of family or stuff. I mean, about yourself. You want to set goals ahead. If I wanted to pass a course, it meant that maybe I needed to read ahead and make sure I did understand what I had read. If I didn't understand, then that was a good opportunity in class. That's why I told you that I wouldn't allow a lecturer to leave when I've not understood what he's saying. I mean, the point was he's supposed to come and teach us. So if I don't understand, you need to explain for me to understand. That's the whole point. So if I had to ask a question, in some cases, I mean, I'm sure it might be happening even now. Some of your colleagues might be telling you, because the time is very close for us to end the lecture. So they might be telling you, oh, you two, put your hands down. Man, it's about you. You need to understand this. We are mates. Not everyone is the same. So if you need to understand something, make sure you do understand in class. You go back to your hall and you are rather exploring to get a deeper understanding, not now trying to understand. I'm not working with a Ghanaian company now. Okay, so I'm working on a project for, I mean, it's across Africa, right? With them. Yeah, exactly. So I mean, when we started on Teams. Okay, okay, that's fine. So as usual, I mean, I had got these skills which I did learn from most of the Ghanaian organizations. For example, the last company I worked with before I got a foreign job, right? When I went there, I mean, I went there with a concept of PHP, Laravel, and then front end skills. It was a full stack developer job. Can you believe that after, did it take even a month? No, about 3 weeks. I was told to pick up Spring Boot, another framework, a Java framework for work, right? And we were supposed to develop some application that was going to be used by Ghana Revenue Authority. You can imagine the scale of this. I was given only a weekend to learn this. I was to familiarize myself with the framework and develop the APIs and then stuff that will be used by the front end guys to, because it was a team and a big work. I wasn't going to do all, others were going to serve as the front end, and I was going to act as a back end in that scenario. So, I mean, I had already been familiar with this. It was a weekend, you had to not sleep, do all the learning you had to do to get things, to understand things, and then you pick it up and then use it to do some work. So, having encountered things like that, and it wasn't the only job, I tried several languages and tools in my previous work opportunities. So I then knew that, okay, I have the skill that I can use to apply for a foreign job. But also LinkedIn played a role. It is important you update your skills on LinkedIn and then your work experience there. So I was reached out to by some, I'd been reached out to by others, but another person did reach out. We communicated. I went for my interview and then I landed this job. I'm currently working with Atos. It's an organization in Paris. But they have a project which they are working on in Africa with MTN Africa. So although my major with MTN Ghana, the project is such that we work across the whole continent. So you can imagine I can be on my bed and then I'll get a call from somebody in South Africa claiming there was a merge. He thought I did a merge into some repository and it has broken some code in at South Africa. And so we need to get on a call and resolve it. A lot of people work on these repositories and stuff like that. Just like Michael was mentioning, there are instances. So I wanted to relate it to what you were discussing initially on the Teams page when you were saying some people wanted to move out. Guys, I joined a team. We had to work, and you've done your bit. Somebody has to do his bit, and he's not doing it. What are you going to do? These are things that you're going to face in the real world. So are you going to also leave the company because somebody didn't do his work? That won't be the case. You always try to find a happy moment. A happy moment with your colleagues. That is why we have a retrospective, right? Which we talked about with the Scrum. But in some cases, you have to take up other tasks just so things can get, because we need to deliver value, just so things can get moving. You will talk with these people, they might be relaxed a little, they don't take things as serious as you may, but you still need to do the work. Yeah. Yeah, I could ask for interns because I mean at some point they needed people to learn on the job, especially for final year students like this. They could learn and come into play as long as you can demonstrate the skills. I would have to ask, but the reason it's quite difficult on our side because our projects are with clients that
are in a very fast-paced environment. I can promise you, MTN Africa, MTN South Africa, MTN Nigeria, MTN Zambia, MTN Uganda. These guys, requirements are flowing in every day, and then you need to deliver on things. And so, because of the environment, that's why sometimes it's difficult for them to pick up. But I will ask, and I'll let you know if there are opportunities available. I think someone put in chat. I think someone put in chat. Is first class important? It depends on how you look at it. Do you want to get first class only to pass school? To me, it's important. Why? Because if you are actually learning the thing that you are using to get a first class, then it becomes very important because at the end of the day, you actually have the skill. But if you are able to maneuver your way to get a first class just for the paper, then I think it's a big mistake for yourself. Okay, most recruiters see sample projects before even granting an interview. Yeah, some like I told you. I mean, for my current job, I had worked in about 4 different organizations prior to this. I had also worked on, I mean, personal projects. I'd gone to get contracts myself with some people, and I'd worked on projects. So I did have that, but like I told you, you can actually prove what you can do in your speech. It is possible to also know someone who is just bragging but can't actually do the thing. So sometimes, depending on how you go about presenting yourself, you can skip some stages of an interview. They might not necessarily require, okay, share with me these links or stuff. Because based on how you talked, usually I did my interview by telling you what I've done. So I talk about it in terms of how I try to accomplish a particular goal in a project I worked on. All right. So in that case, you'll get to realize I do know what I'm talking about. So it won't be about. Exactly. I mean, the last question in chat. The person should, I will share my LinkedIn details with Mark to forward it to you, and then you'll most likely. Yes, I mean, if you remember Kenny's speech, he did show you the different roles that you can engage in as a software engineer. If you go in as a full stack engineer, sometimes depending on the requirements or the jobs at the time, you can end up doing different works. I mean, different role. You can end up being in different roles at a time. But full time is a very serious. Don't take it just on a face value. Sometimes you just, I will answer that. Don't think about full time as though you are just presenting UI. There's not much work to do. You know, there's a lot of work there sometimes even than backend. So if you go to Instagram, you see people sharing things, designers sharing UIs they've done. There are a lot of sites you can check templates, try them out. They can even become projects that you can present to your interview panel. You can just host it somewhere simply, a one-page website which just shows a UI that you've done, and then you can present it. But you can certainly get a full-time job as a front-end developer. There are a lot of them out there. Yeah, the how many hours person? At a point in time, my PC was the one even telling me you've done so many hours on your PC, so you have to you have to reduce the amount of time you spend behind the PC. I mean, max recommendation, but there's no fixed hours, except I feel so tired and I want to sleep. But I do my work. At the end of the day, I'm still trying things out. So you could say that earlier, I mean, currently, even my weekends, I use it to do some work. So so daily, I could say 12 hours minimum. Oh, okay. It might not be necessarily continuous, right? Don't look at it that way. It might not be necessarily continuous. I mean, you can code, relax, come back to it, and stuff like that. Yeah, that's the one I told them that, guys, that is the reality also out there, like you indicated on Teams. In some cases, I can tell you, there were times in school I actually did the assignments for the group. It's not like I just wanted to do it because I could. It's only because the point was that those guys, maybe they didn't take what we were doing serious because they had other things they could rely on. I wanted that skill. And if you try to make the attempt to engage them, in some cases you do it. I did it and then had a session with them where we all went through because they may not be familiar with it, right? That also does happen. But if you attempt to get their engagement and it's not working, please, you need to also get your grade. So you might have to sacrifice a little. Okay. Let me answer that question before that. Did the company require you to know a little bit of French? No. I mean, this is a remote work, and it was going to be in Africa, so English was the expectation. Actually, I'm with the HQ in South Africa. So the company is actually situated in France, but they have another. I mean, I think it's actually their HQ. It's in South Africa. So that's where they are the ones I work with. Now, the type who is not a fan of programming, do I have a chance in the industry? Yes. I did show you when we went through Scrum and Agile. I mean, this is a role that is now being sought for. It's people are paying huge for such a role. Did you see us talk so much about technicalities? I told you you needed an understanding of the technical stuff and you needed to be able to liaise with business in terms of requirements. But then that's a role you don't need necessarily be a programmer or a scrum master, for a product owner, a professional scrum master, a professional product owner. These are roles you don't need to be very, very, very technically inclined. The technically comes to play when you need to understand the concepts and then communicate it. But that's it. You can actually make it. There are roles like business analyst. It may not necessarily be in tech environments. You can be a business analyst, and those ones are not necessarily coding, but they are doing some bit of they are in the field of software engineering. How is Scrum Master chosen for a project? I mean, Scrum Master role, for example, now that the is I said it's a bit more than project management. So experience is very needed in those areas, especially in the field that they need that Scrum Master. You need to have command over the area. I mean, to understand concepts around that field. It's really important because you are going to manage a team that is going to deliver on that. So if you don't have a way to help a product owner communicate his requirements to development team, and development team being able to also liaise with that product owner through you, it might be you might find yourself a bit wanting. So you just need an understanding in that area, but you can apply for a Scrum Master role on a project as long as you have this bit of experience in managing teams, right? Just get a bit of experience in managing teams. Not only human beings, actually developers, so you can imagine. Come again. It's very likely. Okay, I see it. It's very likely as a developer you won't be able to meet deadlines always. How do you handle such cases? Very, very good question. And a very, very simple answer to this. I mean, my presentation, I just tried to make you know how things do go in the real world. The truth is, you can be given loads of work within a short period. But it's essential that even if you can't complete all, make sure you deliver some value. That is what they look out for. I mean, in my fast-paced environment, truth is, we may not be able to deliver or meet up on all the deliverables. But as long as you can show that you made some efforts, you've done some work that is actually working, you've done some bit of the work that is actually being presented, you can review it and then you can see that it adds some increment to the goal. Then you know that your employer will not, I mean, they are aware of this, so they won't take you off. And if you have very good reasons why you don't meet the demands, then that's also fine. Because like I told you, don't forget that because we are running agile and scrum, development must be in a consistent manner. Sprints must be very consistent. So you take up enough that can be done within the period. Do not just overload yourself so that you don't meet the expectations and then you just find yourself wanting. Somebody asked, would you say that it's your passion that has brought you this far? It's not only passion. I mean, you might say I did want to learn this thing, but like I told you, do you think that even if I didn't want to do business and I found myself in business, I wouldn't do well there? That's not the case, and I believe by God's grace I would have also done well there, because things will not always go the way they want. But when they meet you, you need to be prepared to also meet the situation. That's what's important. So it goes left, prepare to meet it left. If it goes right, situations go right, prepare to meet it right. That's why it's important not to be indecisive, guys. Be very decisive. And just know that, I mean, your decisions do come along with consequences. So be prepared for it. Be prepared to stand up to whatever decisions you make, and you should be fine. Windows compared to other OS. I mean, if you guys know, Bash is now being incorporated even into Windows. So don't worry. But maybe, I mean, you can't deny the fact that Linux is the deal. Most VMs, or I mean servers out there are on Linux, but there are also a lot. I mean, Azure has a very large customer base, and most of their services are on their Windows server, platform servers. So not it's not like it's a one-way deal, but you'd most likely, for free range or to do a lot of things, you want to go with Linux. I think it's Teams. Probably there's some configuration with my Teams account, and then when I join and then exactly. Yeah. Yeah, C plus plus. C plus plus. Oh, okay.